Wow, Penacony 2.1 quest was great. So great that it made Shanzhou Luofu arc. Well, we don't talk about the Luofu arc here. We did get some answers to the questions from 2.0 quest, but also more questions, some confusing plot points, surprising reveals, and everything else in between. So in this video, I'm gonna do a high-level recap of the quest followed by analysis of the story. Obviously, there'll be spoilers of the quest and one side quest that you would see on the screen right now. I put down timestamps of the different segments of the video, so feel free to jump around if you want, and references mentioned in this video will be in the description box below. Now, let's get to it. The quest started where we left off in 2.0 with Aventurine explaining that the room was not the crime scene where Robin's death happened. Instead, what we saw was a memory of it. Using Duke Inferno's death as his rationale, Aventurine pointed his finger at Akron as the one responsible for unleashing death in the dreamscape. This was something that he later revealed to Ratio as his way to keep Akron in check. The less unknown variable in his plan, the better. He once again offered to team up with the Astral Express because it was his goal to restore the ownership of Penacony back to the IPC, and Robin's death might just be the key to crack the family's high wall and start negotiation anew. Then we saw the continuation of Akron versus Sam. Just as Akron was about to unsheath her sword, the memory of her confrontation with Duke Inferno flooded her mind, and that made her pause. She told Sam it was not his time yet to die, and to his surprise, she revealed that she knew the person inside the armor and offered her help instead. Sam declined, although he did disclose that if Akron was after the Watchmaker's legacy, she should look into the family and told her that the Astral Express were not her enemy. He also mentioned that the only instruction he got from Elio was to get all the Astral Express crew to track down the Grand Legacy. Back with the crew, Himeko informed everyone that the family had commissioned them to investigate Firefly's death, but not Robin's. It was not even mentioned. Then they collectively agreed to team up with Aventurine, but Welt reminded everyone not to put their full trust in him, lest he took advantage of the crew. Leaving Welt to investigate something else in Golden Hour, the crew went back to Reverie Reality. There they found no signs of Firefly ever entering the dreamscape, as though she never existed in the first place. Weird, Himeko said, because if she was indeed a stowaway, at least there should have been a record of her disguise. To which Trailblazer suggested that she might have entered the dreamscape not via the dream pool, but instead via Silverwolf's tech, the same way the crew did earlier. And with the revelation of Firefly's identity as Sam, that was very likely how she did it. She came in as Sam with the help of Silverwolf. Following the information from the two bloodhounds at the lobby, the crew were back in the dreamscape to find the officer in charge of the case, whom Marge concluded must have been Gallagher. And once again, Trailblazer came across the guard who didn't recognize Gallagher from 2.0, and he still did not. And Trailblazer had to use the clockwork to get around him. They got to talking with Gallagher, and he revealed that the Watchmaker was none other than Mikhail, the same one whose name Trailblazer and Firefly heard and saw floating around at a child's dream, and that he was a shameful stain in the history of Penacony, a betrayer of the family. There's more to what Gallagher shared, and we will discuss it in the analysis section later. Meanwhile, Aventurine had been summoned by Sunday for questioning because he was found at the scene of Robin's death. And this is where Aventurine made such a big brain move involving 3 bargaining chips that he claimed to be all he needed to win the gamble. Note, a memory of this conversation could be seen in the first dreamscape that Trailblazer and Akron shared at the beginning of 2.0 quest. Interestingly so, but more on this later. Now, Aventurine's scheme went something like this. He destroyed his Aventurine stone, hid it in the bag along with Jade's, and put Topaz stone in the box that was originally meant to store his stone. Those were the 3 chips Aventurine was talking about. Not knowing this, Ratio opened the box in front of Sunday, revealing the Topaz in it, and pointed out the existence of Jade in the bag, which was mistaken for Aventurine. All the while, they completely missed the real Aventurine stone that was of similar shade of green, albeit having lost its radiance after Aventurine shattered it, making it seem like any other worthless gems in the bag. Since Sunday agreed to return his bag, that was how Aventurine managed to get his hand on his cornerstone again. That was very smart of him, not gonna lie. Also, apparently, Sunday could draw power from Shippei to Harmony, and with it, he put Aventurine into a questioning under oath, basically. Aventurine was caught lying, and the questioning became an execution that would result in his demise if he failed to uncover the truth of the murder within 17 hours. However, Aventurine's plan was so big-brained that he even made himself believe that Ratio betrayed him for real. They parted ways, and Ratio left him a parting note that Aventurine should only open when he's at his wit's end. With 17 hours left on the clock, Aventurine desperately gave away his money to people on the street in exchange for information about death, or so he wanted to be perceived. Sure enough, his desperate act summoned Sparkle, who confirmed his suspicion about Robin. Robin was the mute Sparkle told him to befriend, but there was another. This other mute was still in Penacony, but Sparkle said Aventurine wouldn't be able to locate him. With that confirmation and extra clue from Sparkle, Aventurine proceeded to clock to the theme park to execute the final part of his plan. While everyone returned back to reality to start the investigation, Welt had stayed behind and confronted Acheron, who apparently had been in stealth mode, spying on the crew the whole time they were having the conversation. He asked her to reveal her true identity and intention, or else. Unfazed by the threat, Acheron revealed that she was in Penacony for the Watchmaker's legacy and to fulfill an old final request. Seemingly wanting to confirm his curiosity, Welt shared a story about Kevin Caslana with Acheron, how he was Icarus who flew too close to the sun, how he was not a failure, and it was thanks to him that there were more after him who would surpass what he had achieved. Acheron noticed what Welt was trying to do, and she told him that she was not the person that he thought she was. Then they went to Dulat Pavilion to look for clues about Robin's death. There was a letter from Robin to Sunday which expressed her suspicion that there was something wrong with the harmony and that she would investigate it herself. Pretty reckless of her if you ask me. Other things they found were a list of people attacked by the death meme, a light cone of child Robin putting on a performance for her brother, a letter from Oti from the Alfalfa family to Sunday, and a list of suspects. This list is what led Sunday to the conclusion that the traitor was Gallagher. He put together many different traits of the members of the family to construct Gallagher. Welt and Acheron then regrouped with the rest of the crew, and upon Aventurine's announcement, they went to the theme park to confront him. Aventurine showed his other side as one of the 10 Stonehearts and threatened to destroy the dreamscape, which eventually pushed Acheron to reveal her true nature as an Emanator. She slashed through Aventurine's trick as well as the layer of dream that the family created, bringing the both of them to this sort of domain expansion place with a giant black hole looming in the background. Acheron reconfirmed Aventurine's suspicion about the other mute that died, went to the other side and survived to tell the tale. That mute was Firefly, and it was indeed possible to break through the barrier and come back from it. Yeah, I'm aware that Sparkle said the mute who was in Penacony was a he, and I will address it in the analysis portion later. Then Acheron told Aventurine to continue forward, live that dream because his gamble was not over yet. Finally, we saw Trailblazer in another dreamscape with Sam, and Sam taking off the armor, revealing Firefly in it. And Sunday confronted Gallagher, exposing his identity as a follower of Enigmata, only for Gallagher to brazenly admit to it and kill Sunday in the process. And that's pretty much what happened on a high level. I tried to be brief and omit my opinion as much as possible because now we're getting into the nitty-gritty details. And we're starting with the most obvious one, Acheron's identity. Although it's never explicitly mentioned during the quest, the confirmation of her identity as Emanator of Nihility was in her trailer video. The phrase self-annihilator could be seen sneakily written underneath her umbrella in this scene. Aligned with my theory on Acheron, this identity is only revealed when she unsheathed her sword, and the amount of power that is unleashed could literally annihilate the dream. It annihilated Sparkle's illusion in her trailer. So, as I have theorized before, this was the reason Acheron was hesitant to draw her blade when Firefly was attacked by the death meme. Had she unsheathed her sword, everybody would have been annihilated. Although, come to think of it, everyone would have ended up in her domain and discovered the truth of Penacony quicker? Anyhow, in Databank, it is mentioned that self-annihilators are individuals who have accidentally stepped into the shadow of IX, the Nihility. That's right, it's pronounced IX, not X, not the ninth, not 9, IX. They accidentally stepped into the shadow of IX, causing them to lose the meaning of their own existence. For Acheron, that moment was when she realized that all the fightings, all the sacrifice she had done to protect her home planet from the Kami were pointless. Because Izumo was orbiting not around a black sun, but a black hole around Nihility. So when Welt shared the story about Kevin, Acheron shared her own experience. Instead of the sun, she had been chasing for peace on a planet orbiting around an all-consuming black hole, doomed to be swallowed by it. Why did she even try so hard to resist it in the first place? And I love that exchange with Welt a lot. It's like Acheron was talking to us, the players, directly and was telling us that she's not the same Raiden Mei that most had come to love. She's a variant, one who was born and lived on a planet that was not as lucky as the other Raiden Mei, and not even once Raiden Mei was mentioned in the conversation. The writers didn't have to spell it out for us to get it, but if you got it, you know? Exposition? We don't know her. However, it is suggested that some self-annihilators would conceive the idea of fighting back, which I think is what Acheron has been trying to do. In her Mirror teaser video, she said this, "I knew this word was fleeting, and yet." which in my head doesn't sound like someone who has completely given up hope on life. She still has a streak of red left on her person. She has not completely merged with the shadow of nihility, and before that happens, she wants to reach nihility's end, presumably to break the curse of nihility at its root. Her true identity also explained what she meant when she said that she tends to forget things. It's not intentional. Her memory is one of those things that would gradually fade away on her journey of self-annihilation. The other is the loss of her sense of taste, as noted by Freebaz in her character story Part 4, which was why she could just drink Wake the Heck Up as if it was Soul Glad. Black Swan said it tasted nothing like Sweet Dream, and she was like, really? I couldn't taste the difference. And the mention of Freebaz also confirmed that she was the companion who carried a long blade mentioned in the Pioneer Diver of Dead Waters Relic set. So all this lore is fun and interesting, but how do all this connect with her being in Penacony? She's not looking for loved ones that she has lost on her home planet, because as she has said before, they're not in the dream. So why is she in Penacony? How does finding the Watchmaker's legacy help her in reaching nihility's end? That is something that I still haven't figured out, and maybe I will make a separate video on this once I have a working theory. The other thing that still cannot be explained is that first dreamscape Trailblazer shared with Acheron. After completing Black Swan and Sparkle companion quests, I thought those memories happened in the past because the dialogue between Black Swan and Sparkle did take place in their companion quest, which happened before the main 2.0 Penacony quest. It's safe to assume that Robin and Sundays also took place in the past, perhaps just as Robin arrived in Penacony and told her brother that her voice got a little bit funny and perhaps she might not be able to perform at the Charmony Festival, and because she's dead now. The same goes with the Stellar Hunters, but I'm not so sure anymore because the dialogue between Aventurine and Ratio took place in 2.1, just as they were about to meet Sunday. Is there some kind of time dilation thing happening here? Time is not linear and we could witness memories from the past, present, and the future all at the same time? Is that also why Acheron knew how to walk on walls when she first met Trailblazer and then had not the slightest clue when she was traveling with Trailblazer and Black Swan? See, I thought it was her memory getting wiped due to self-annihilation, but what if that first meeting with Acheron was not the first meeting after all? What if we're in a time loop? I don't know, I'll stop here with the speculation and move on to another character whom I initially had little to no interest in and now become one of my favorite characters after 2.1 quest, Aventurine, or should I call him Kakavasha? Where do I start with this one? Perhaps with, I totally didn't expect to care about him at all, but then he turned out to be one of the best, if not the best written characters in the Penacony arc. His backstory reaffirms my suspicion about Aventurine as a character. To me at first, he came off as someone who put up this front, tough and all smiles because he didn't want people to think him weak or to find out about his past and use that against him. He came from a desert planet called Sigonia 4, specifically from a clan called Afgin. Instead of an Aeon, the clan worship a goddess called Gayatra, and they celebrate the yearly rebirth of the goddess with a festival known as Kakava. Aventurine was born on one of those festival days, and so he was named Kakavasha, meaning a child blessed by Gayatra. And for many Amber eras, Afgin has engaged in a cycle of enmity with another Sigonian clan called Kadika. One day during a Kakava festival, Kadika launched their attack on Afgin, and it was likely that Aventurine was the sole survivor of his clan during this attack. This, in a way, makes him similar to Acheron. Acheron is the sole survivor of her home planet, and Aventurine is the sole survivor of his clan. Acheron still dreams of the people killed by her blade, and Aventurine is haunted by the guilt of being the only survivor of his clan, of his loved ones who sacrificed themselves for him. Acheron has fought for peace and freedom from the Kami, but ultimately realized that the promised peace was a lie. Why did she fight all this while if it's all for naught? Meanwhile, Aventurine has been told all his life that Gayatra has blessed him with good luck, but eventually questioned if it's really his good luck that has kept him alive or really an accumulation of suffering and sacrifice of his loved one. If the fate of death is certain for everyone, why should he fight so hard against it? Why did his family sacrifice themselves for him? And this is what makes his interaction with Acheron very meaningful and ultimately differentiates the two. Acheron, who has lost almost all of her color, who spreads the shadow of nihility along her path, is the one who stopped Aventurine from stepping closer to nihilism. She herself accidentally stepped under the shadow of nihility at a moment of despair, and she recognized that in Aventurine's question. It is ironic that somebody who has long walked on the path of nihility, who has casted the shadow of nihility further across the universe, ultimately becomes the one person who cures Aventurine of his despair of life. ironic in a beautiful way, you know? Add on top of that Ratio's note that he gave to Aventurine earlier, I was actually a mess when what's written was revealed. Do stay alive, Ratio said. And that's the final confirmation that Aventurine needed to realize that Ratio did not betray him. His betrayal was part of Aventurine's plan all along. And speaking of plan, the entirety of Aventurine's plan, pointing fingers at Acheron, threatening to detonate Trailblazer Stellaron, all of that was a bluff to get Acheron to kill him in a dream that would result in him not waking up in reality but be transported to the other side of Penacony that had always been hidden by the family. That was it. All or nothing. The very same catchphrase that was thrown at him by that guy who bought him as a slave, and that stayed with him. Either he succeeded or he died trying to succeed. And that's pretty messed up. He had little to no respect for his own life, and that's why he was betting his all, betting his life really, for the plan to succeed. And he succeeded yet again, which makes me wonder what's up with his good luck. How can somebody be always successful in everything he does? What is he eating? I want some of those too, please. On a more serious note, I do not have a conclusive answer to this for now. What I do know is the name Aventurine derives from the Italian avventura, meaning by chance, which alludes to the accidental discovery of aventurine glass. From there, the name passed to the mineral, which displayed quite a similar appearance. The stone itself is believed to be the luckiest of all the crystals and could help one who wears it create their own luck. We also know that Diamond, a known emanator of preservation within the IPC, is the one who chose the members of the 10 Stone Hearts and granted them these stones. So perhaps Aventurine's good luck, at least the one relating to his success after joining the IPC, originates from his Aventurine stone. Perhaps it's a borrowed power from an Aeon. I'll look into it more and report back to you guys. But we might actually get more details about it in the next patch because with Aventurine's death, putting it within quote now because it's not really dead, Jade is coming to Penacony herself, and together with Topaz, they would execute the next part of the plan to reclaim Penacony for the IPC. What I'm also curious about is what Aventurine will find on the other side, on the real Penacony, the legacy of the Watchmaker. And if we're gonna talk about the legacy, I must first address the glaring inconsistencies spotted throughout this quest and the one before it, specifically about some mistranslation that caused me so much headache until I turned to Reddit and found this one post that pointed out all the errors. I will leave a link to the post downstairs. Starting with Sparkle's conversation with Aventurine. The first one was from 2.0 Quest, where instead of a mute, Sparkle told him to befriend a rock. This is important because that was the clue that led him to investigate Robin in the first place. It was not a throwaway line, it was a clue Sparkle gave him, and that also made it clear where Sparkle stood in this grand festival. She wanted to lead every invited guest to the truth. She talked about a mute to Aventurine, she transported Trailblazer to the real Penacony, she urged Acheron to apply her color, if that has anything to do with anything. The second one was during their conversation in this 2.1 quest. Sparkle said there were two mutes. One was Robin, the other one, and I quote, "Though he is still in Penacony, I'm afraid you'll never find him." However, the direct translation from the Chinese text says, "The other one, she, is still in Penacony, but I'm afraid you cannot find her." The other mute was female, which explains why Aventurine referred to that mute as she during his conversation with Acheron, and that brings us to the third exhibit. When Aventurine said he was in the know of our Stellaron friend's identity, he was not referring to Trailblazer. What he said was, it's the identity of that person, right? He was referring to somebody else's identity, somebody whose identity Acheron recently learned of. And whose identity did Acheron just discover recently? Sam, and the truth of who was inside his armor. So you can imagine my confusion when playing the quest. The only she Sparkle mentioned was Robin, but now she also came back from the other side and was alive and well in Penacony? I even made a note in my notebook about it because of how confusing it was. If it's not for the Firefly is Sam theory that I've subscribed to, thanks to Cat with Blue Hat and Go Solo videos, I would have been very shocked at the reveal. Plus, Acheron said she knew who it was inside the armor, and because she relies on emotions, I was inclined to believe that the only way she could figure it out was because she had met the person inside the armor before. Somebody who she had met before, also someone who she knew would try to keep Trailblazer safe. When I thought about it, one person immediately came to mind. Also, previously, I proposed the concept of limbo as the place where the people who were attacked by the death meme would go. Essentially, it's similar to the limbo introduced in the movie Inception, whereby the body of the person in real life is still intact, but their mind is trapped somewhere deep in the dream. Which is why I believe Firefly's and Robin's death have never been real. And now that we know Firefly did come back from the other side, I think I'm on the right track with my theory. Although apparently Firefly didn't need to be safe as I originally theorized, considering her status as a Stellaron hunter, perhaps Silverwolf was the one who assisted her in coming back. It has been her plan all along to be captured and killed by the death meme. When she said she had to try again, she meant she had to try to be captured by the death meme again. Because the last time she was almost captured, Black Swan interrupted it and saved her and Trailblazer. And when she said sorry, perhaps she meant sorry that Trailblazer had to bear witness to her murder. Which got me thinking, at what point Trailblazer was traveling with Kafka, right? Within that period of time, I wonder if Firefly and Trailblazer had grown close and just how close. Firefly admitted to having tried to go against the script 11 times just to try to reveal her identity to Trailblazer. She didn't have to, but making Trailblazer witness her murder was also not part of her plan, and she knew it must have caused Trailblazer a lot of pain, and she would like to rectify that. And speaking of rectifying a mistake, I wonder if Sunday regretted confronting Gallagher with no backup whatsoever with him. Oh, this man. He started off as a calm and collected head of the Oak family, and then turned out to be one of the most unhinged characters in Penacony. Love that for him. His little mind control magic thing was pretty insane and dangerous, although not the most surprising thing someone from the family ever pulled off. They've always had this aura that reminds me of Ba Sing Se from the Avatar series. Without going into too much detail, because I'm planning to make a separate video about the family and Shipei the Harmony, the family sure have done some pretty dodgy things in Penacony, wiping people's memories, turning others into memories on memes, and all that crazy stuff. Going back to Sunday's little mind control magic thing, the effect on the screen when he's using the influence of Shipei is very similar to when Robin was making some adjustment on Trailblazer so that they were more in tune with the resonance of the harmony. Now, I know Sunday said it's so that the Trailblazer could control their limbs freely in the dreamscape, but I don't recall any of the Astral Express crew talking about this. They had no similar experience. It was only the Trailblazer. And don't you think it's weird that the siblings just so happened to be there the moment Trailblazer arrived in the dreamscape? I mean, I could understand why Robin could be there. She had the rehearsal to go to, but Sunday? The Duelet Pavilion is in the moment of dew, not in the golden hour. Was he waiting for Trailblazer so that he could work his little mind control magic thing on them as well? And he met Robin to do all the work lest we become suspicious. For all we know, Trailblazer has been branded by the Harmony too. Perhaps not in the way Aventurine was, where their life could be in danger, but in a way that they're bound to the Harmony. I wouldn't be surprised if this eventually would lead to Trailblazer gaining the Harmony path. A new path is long overdue after all. What did surprise me though was the revelation of Gallagher being the follower of Enigmata. Although it did confirm my suspicion about him, you see, he has been under my radar since 2.0 when that one NPC guard said he knew nobody named Gallagher. Trailblazer tried to name drop him so that together with Firefly they could go to Firefly's hiding spot at Dream's Edge, right? But the guard was like, "Who?" Plus one of the two guards who were trying to arrest Firefly didn't recognize him either. The other one, however, recognized not his face or his name, but his brown hair and grey vest. This, among many others, were traits of the other members of the family that he put together to construct his identity as Gallagher. This was also what Akron was getting at when she and Welt went through the list of the 52 suspects in Sunday's office, but she quickly brushed it off, thinking that she might overthink it. Little did she know she was closer to the truth than she originally thought, and I wonder if this will be brought up again in the next quest. The question now is, what is Gallagher? If he is a follower of Enigmata, which faction does he belong to? Well, he actually has given us the answer himself. When talking about the rebellion that Hanu started, he said Hanunu fought alongside a motley crew of masked fools, nameless, Hexorifixinologists, morning actors, Oman vanguards, even visitors from beyond the sky. There's one faction there that follows Enigmata, Historyfixinologists. And that's where my problem started. You see, according to Databank, Historyfixinologists are a group of emanators of Enigmata who travel from planet to planet with the sole purpose of fabricating, obscuring, destroying, and erasing the local history. They fabricate local history, so exactly how much of what he said to the crew was the truth? But for now, let's assume that everything he said was true. He said he was 13 with capitalized T, and thanks to this one Twitter post, I now know it could mean that his death, implying his relation to the death meme. He also said Mikhail was the watchmaker, which could be gathered as much from 2.0 Quest, and if you want to learn more about this, I will link to videos from I'm Emma May and Leah Lord that talk about this in great details. But he also said that Mikhail was a betrayer of the family and that he died in obscurity, somewhere no one could find him. Now, if you've done a side quest from Mr. McCoy, an assistant in the Oak family, you would know that he was once requested to wipe away the existence of his brother and sister because they were traitors to the family. The order came directly from the Dream Master, the overlord of the family, and McCoy said he used the family way to wipe out his siblings' existence from the dreamscape, which resulted in the siblings turning into memes, while in reality, the siblings were still asleep in a never-ending slumber. See, I told you, the family is very dodgy. Now, in my head, this family way is not unlike sending people in the dreamscape to the other side. Since the family is the one who put up the barrier to separate the glamorous sweet dreams from the real Penacony, from the other side, who's to say that they don't know how to send people past the barrier? And since this is how the family handles traitors, I wonder if they did the same thing to the Watchmaker, and the death meme is the lingering anguish of the Watchmaker haunting the dreamscape. Another thing that Gallagher mentioned was that there's somebody who inherited the Watchmaker title and that person had been working against the family. He didn't know who it was or if it's really another person or simply a ghost of the original Watchmaker, which was a very odd thing to say. A ghost, huh? Yeah, no, actually not odd at all. See, again, without going into too much detail because I will talk about it in a future video, I'm of the mindset that not only Misha is connected to the Watchmaker, but also Misha is not real. Now that Gallagher brought the ghost card onto the table, there might be some truth to that theory. We'll see. Oh, would you look at the time? Gosh, this is the longest video I've had on this channel so far that is not a live stream. I do have more things to say, but they're not yet ready to be presented, so we'll let them marinate a little bit more before I serve it to you guys. For now, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye!